Greetings, everyone. This is Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host, and this is another episode of America's Greatest Personalities. This episode, it is my pleasure to talk to you about an incredible lady, a beautiful but unfortunately broken soul, an astounding talent by the name of Billie Holiday. Stay tuned. Let's begin painting this character portrait of Billie Holiday with some of the many things that she was famous for saying. Billie Holiday once said, "If I'm going to sing like somebody else, then I really don't need to sing at all." She also said, "Singing songs like The Man I Love and I Love You Porgy is no more work than sitting down and eating Chinese roast duck, and I love roast duck." Next, Ms. Holiday said, "I never hurt nobody but myself, and that's nobody's business but my own." And finally, the great Billie Holiday said, "Dope never helped anybody sing better or play music better or do anything better. All dope can do for you is kill you, and kill you the long, slow, hard way. And it can kill the people you love right along with you." So very telling. It is often said that the way our lives pan out in adulthood is largely a result of the type of childhood that we had. In other words, many believe that we are the product today of the type of childhood we had yesterday, back then. If good things happen to you as a child, mostly, then you'll most likely continue to have good things happen to you as an adult. But if bad things happen to you as a child, you'll have a tough time overcoming those to where they don't tend to repeat themselves quite often in adulthood. It's kind of an energetic stamp that one often has a hard time overcoming, being aware of and releasing. Can one overcome a very difficult upbringing? I believe the question would be, yeah, but also no. Why would I say yes and no? Because I think it's largely up to the individual to want to overcome the result of a very difficult childhood and want to get help to help themselves do just that. And the key word in what I just said is want to overcome that. I don't even think it's a question of knowing how to overcome it. It's more wanting to, and then really getting the help you need to do just that. So let's talk about Billie Holiday. Let's see how all of this, of what I just shared with you, relates to Billie Holiday and actually set the stage now for her birth and her early childhood. First, let's talk about Billie's mother. Billie's mother was kicked out of her parents' home when she was only 13. Why would that have happened? Because she was pregnant with Billie. So what do? Think about this. When you are 13 years of age, homeless, and pregnant. In Sadie Fagan's case, you marry the father of your child. The marriage didn't last, unfortunately, and Billie ended up being raised by her mother and other relatives. Eleanor Fagan Gough, Gough, was born on April 7th, 1915. Billie had what you would call a very difficult childhood. Her mother was nothing more than a teenager when Billie was born. Add to the fact that the relatives of Billie's mother asked to take care of Billie, who asked also volunteered to take care of Billie, couldn't have cared less about Billie herself. So really, why bother? She would later claim that she was allegedly raped at the age of 10. To that end, Billie would find herself in a Catholic reform school because of the alleged rape. The young girl was supposed to stay there until she was an adult, but a relative actually helped get her out after only 2 years' time. Maybe, just maybe, she should have stayed there just a little longer. When her mother decided to move to Brooklyn, New York in 1928, it would only be a year later that Billie would allegedly be raped again. This time, it was by a neighbor who ended up serving only 3 months in jail for that more than atrocious crime. So, did things get better after that? Well, unfortunately not. Billie was allegedly recruited by a brothel and ended up working as a prostitute in 1930. She would even wind up in jail for soliciting. I think even at this early point in time, it's clear why Billie actually chose to sing the blues. She could really go back into her past, reach and pull out that pain, that heartbreak, that hurt, that anguish, and sing about it. People often say that you can only sing from what you have experienced in life. And with that in mind, Billie started singing for tips in a number of Harlem nightclubs. If you can put what you feel into a song, you have the possibility of really moving people. And it is my belief that Billie did just that and more. A true artist wears their life's emotions on their sleeve and isn't afraid to pull on that and reenact it to get some feeling across to their audience. Billie's audiences were right there with her, so much so that word started to spread about Billie's raw, emotional, and expressive singing talent, and lo and behold, one night she was discovered. John Hammond was the talent agent that convinced Billie to make her recording debut with none other than the one, the only Mr. Benny Goodman. Now that's a great talent agent. All of this almost didn't happen because Hammond came that night to hear another singer thinking he wanted to sign her. Unbeknownst to him, the singer was performing in a Broadway show that night. Hammond decided to stay at the club, and it was Billie that he ended up hearing. He was so moved by what he heard and saw that Hammond decided to bring Benny Goodman into that club to see Billie in performance. And of course, the rest is history. Thank God those two guys were able to recognize brilliant, raw talent that could really move people. So how do you think a young woman from such an awful hard knock life all of a sudden finds herself recording for the very first time with the great Benny Goodman? How do you think she felt? It must have been amazing. It must have been amazing. Through drive, determination, picturing what you want before it happens, and having faith in believing in your talent and knowing you're going to get there somehow, that's how Billie did it. That was the mindset that she had. One of the tunes that Billie helped make popular at this time was a tune that I'm sure most of you know. Ooh, what a little moonlight can do. And if you ask me, nobody can sing it like the great Billie Holiday. You can find that on YouTube, by the way. Some wonderful footage of her and some wonderful versions of that recording sung by her. That number and another one called Miss Brown to You helped establish the great Billie Holiday as a major recording star. This boost helped Billie land a film role with none other than the great Duke Ellington. Amazing stuff. So now Billie would find herself appearing with some of big band's greatest and biggest names. Names such as Count Basie, Artie Shaw, Teddy Wilson, Jimmy Lunsford, Fletcher Henderson, and the list really goes on and on and on. All the while, Billie was making history doing this and breaking records. Here's just one example. She was one of the first, if not the first, Black women to appear with an all-white orchestra. And that was with Artie Shaw's orchestra. She also did that with Benny Goodman's orchestra. Here's another record-breaking, history-making example. Billie recorded a tune called Strange Fruit. You can also find that on YouTube. The time wasn't ready for that, and that tune wasn't like any other of its day. It was actually about lynching in the South in Billie's day. It actually became an underground hit, and Billie would keep it in her act for the next 20 years. You can be 100% certain that no other big band jazz singer of the day sang a song about lynching and extreme racism. Kudos for Billie to having the courage, the will, and the drive to do so. And speaking of momentous recordings, it would be at this very point in time that Billie would end up recording the song that would be most known for her, even to this very day, Lover Man, oh, where can you be? Nobody else can sing it, if you ask me, like the great Billie Holiday. The song was written especially for her, and of course it became an instant hit. Another sure winner that Billie called her own throughout the course of time is a number called God Bless the Child Who's Got His Own, or Tain't Nobody's Business If I Do, or Them Their Eyes. All amazing tunes. There were more. Fine and Mellow, Good Morning Heartache, and Crazy He Calls Me. Still hits to this very day. And there's another one that we shouldn't leave out. Please Don't Talk About Me When I'm Gone. Well, all this stardom was just fine, but some of you might be wondering what was going on in Holiday's personal life. There's always two sides to every success story, professional and personal. And in so many cases of the people that we speak about in this series, what was going on behind the curtain wasn't as bright and cheery as what was going on in front of the curtain. Billie would marry a trombonist by the name of Jimmy Monroe on August 25th, 1941. That's also when her drug addiction tightened its grip on Billie. She was already into alcohol and marijuana at the time, but now she also began smoking opium. While she was still married to Monroe, Billie had an affair with a trumpeter by the name of Joe Guy. Joe also happened to have been Billie's drug dealer. Oh, and she also happened to have been Guy's common-law wife, even though she was still married to Monroe. Go figure. Now, unfortunately, Billie was into heroin. She eventually divorced Monroe and broke things up with Guy as well. To make matters worse, Billie would be arrested for drug use in 1947 and was sentenced to an 8-month term at the Alderson Federal Correctional Institution for Women in West Virginia. One of the side effects from such a punishment was to have her New York City cabaret license revoked. That meant, as you can probably imagine, that Billie was not able to perform anywhere that served alcohol in New York City, a city that she called home for no less than 12 years. The 1950s, unfortunately, weren't any kinder to Ms. Holliday. Her drug use, along with numerous abusive relationships with men, took a real toll on her failing health, mentally and physically. All of this eventually took a toll on her singing voice. Even though the brilliance and clarity of her voice was no longer present at this point in time, the mere fact that Billie could now sing the blues on a deeper level than ever before because of what had happened to her and because of what she was going through strengthened the vocal punch she'd give people when they would come to hear her perform. And with that, here's a question I have for you. Why do you think she could now sing things on a deeper emotional level? The answer is obvious. Because of what had happened to her personally within the last number of years. A lot of stuff that she could sing about. In fact, Billie was the first and only singer of her day that knew how to inject painfully true emotions into any song that she sang. It was often an incredible experience to hear her sing. Heartbreaking too. You knew and felt exactly how she felt and where she was up here and here singing the tunes that she sang. So, none of the saccharine-like interchangeable blandness that you would find in other singers then and today. Billie was the real thing. March 28th, 1952 was the day that Billie would marry once again. This time, she married a guy by the name of Louis McKay, who happened to have been a mafia enforcer. Even though he too was abusive, he did try to get Billie to stop her ongoing drug habit. Unfortunately, he would not be successful. On November 10th, 1956, a major milestone was reached in the career of Billie Holiday. Just like Benny Goodman before her, Billie had the chance to perform at this country's premier concert hall, New York City's Carnegie Hall, for an African-American artist that came from nothing. This was a major something. 1956 also happened to have been the year Billie and a ghostwriter would pen her infamous autobiography by the name of Lady Sings the Blues, of which, as you might remember, a very famous, amazingly acted film that Diana Ross would appear in called Lady Sings the Blues. Of course, Diana played Billie Holiday, a brilliant portrayal that I feel, even back then, was not given its true justice. For a long time, historians were claiming that the information in Billie's book couldn't be authenticated, but in the mid-1990s, an avid researcher and historian was actually able to authenticate most of what one reads in Billie's autobiography. Who would have known that Billie Holiday would grace us with her enormous but delicate talent for just 2 more years? After 2 extremely successful European tours, a number of years later, Billie would record what would be her last and final recording. Her final public appearance was at a benefit concert in New York City on May 25th, 1959. She would only be able to make it through 2 of the many numbers that she was supposed to sing. One of them was the famous "Ain't Nobody's Business If I Do." Tragically, on May 31st, 1959, the great Billie Holiday was taken to New York City's Metropolitan Hospital, suffering from liver and heart disease. As she lay dying, Billie was arrested for drug possession. How so? Sadly, she was still allegedly procuring heroin even on her deathbed. With a 24-hour police guard at her hospital room door, Holliday would pass on due from cirrhosis of the liver on July 17th, 1959. The great Billie Holiday was only 44 years of age when she passed, and get this, folks, Billie Holiday had only 70 cents in her bank account at the time of her passing. So, in closing, what can one say about this? A lot, but at the same time, maybe it's better not to say too much and have you draw your own conclusions from Billie's really incredible journey. For someone, as stated before, who came from nothing, who had such a terrible childhood, the addictive energy started very early with her. And sadly, maybe she never really wanted to overcome her addictions. But she did channel the heartbreak into her songs. And unfortunately, really, her life experience on the negative side made her into the great singer she was. But I think Billie Holiday had the immense talent that even if she had grown up quite differently, she still would have been able to produce the emotion, the feeling, and energy of any song that she would have chosen to sing. And that was the life story of the great Billie Holiday. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here with me. This has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host, with another episode of America's Greatest Personality.